Hi everyone, welcome to this revision video on the idea of crime as a social construct. This video is going to be a little bit shorter than some of the others and doesn't have a Google form quiz attached, and this is because this isn't one of the key theories or studies in the units of GCSE. It is in fact a key concept, so it's not something that we need to know in as much detail, but it is still just as important to understand for your GCSE and for your Year 10 assessments. Let's start with the definition of a social construct outside of the realm of psychology and criminal psychology. So a social construct is a concept that exists as the result of interactions between people who make up a society. Basically, this means that a social construct is something that we as people have just decided upon. So something like the law of gravity is not a social construct. That is an objective law of physics that is never going to change because somebody disagrees with it. On the other hand, the idea of a country is a social construct because we as people have decided where that line should be drawn to differentiate one country from the other. We've decided at what point you move from being in Spain to being in Portugal. It's not objective and it could change if the right people disagreed and decided to make that change. So if we think about the idea of crime being a social construct, it means that societies determine what is considered criminal. And often this is based on what is considered acceptable at that particular point in time. So let's look at some examples. So, for example, in some societies, assisting a terminally ill person to die is considered acceptable, and it's not against the law. In contrast, in the UK, euthanasia is legally wrong, although it may not always be considered to be morally wrong. As a result, if someone in the UK helps a terminally ill patient to die, they would be considered a criminal. Some other examples, we've got things that are illegal in other countries and yet legal when they're in the UK, such as homosexuality and women being allowed to drive. Again, this is dependent on your culture, and in the case of homosexuality, dependent on your time. At some point in the UK, that law was changed that made homosexuality legal, and so suddenly changed people from being criminals to not being criminals anymore, despite the fact that they were acting on the same behaviour. So this is where we have problems when our idea of crime is socially constructed. Take the example of the age of consent. An 18-year-old who has sex with a 15-year-old can be branded a paedophile in the UK because a child under the age of 16 doesn't have the legal capacity to consent to sex. Now, the problem this causes for psychologists is that they may then begin to investigate that person's biology or family background to find out what made them that way and what made them into a criminal. However, if the offender moved to a country where the age of consent was younger, he suddenly wouldn't be classed as a criminal, despite the fact that his biology, his background, and his actions haven't changed. And therefore, it makes it really difficult for psychologists to try to define what a criminal is if the idea of crime can change based on your culture, your time period, or your view. That is, in essence, the argument that we've got that surrounds the idea of crime being a social construct. So the key things to remember are that it means that crime has been defined by a group of people and is not objective, and that this causes problems for psychologists because it is difficult to base theories around something that could change. Thank you very much, and see you at school.